Greeting, nerds and geeks, Potterheads and browncoats. Welcome to another edition of the best podcast in Faerun, Middle Earth, and all points in between. Welcome to the Nerdy Old Men Podcast. I'm not just an old man, I'm a level 20 paladin. Name's Wes, and here with me, as always, is my co host, Chad.
That is right, Wes. Thank you very much. I am not Colonel Mustard, but in fact, my name is Chad and I am the co host. But I may be in the kitchen with a lead pipe. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to discuss the bread and butter of that all important family game night, the catalyst of flipping tables, the weekend ruiner. Yes, in fact, we're going to talk about board games. Yes,
Should be a good show.
that's right. So as it comes from the BP, blood pressure increasing game that is Jenga, to the table flipping of Monopoly, where the kids have always got to win even they don't understand how to play it. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit. So, Wes, give us a start out of something that you like.
Oh, well, I think, where do we start? I've having young children, I've played a lot of board games. One of the kids' favorite game, mine as well. I'm gonna start off with Candyland.
Candyland, yes.
Candyland, yes. An interesting game. You move your little piece, you draw the cards, you move along. Never fails. Everybody's after that ice cream card. You don't want to get that gumdrop after you've got all the way up to the top of the board.
What would be funny is to take like the D&D game group and play Candyland, just to see how aggressive that could possibly be.
Well, having two 9-year-olds, they take it pretty serious, and honestly, this was the first board game I could play as a kid.
Yeah, and I think that is where everybody tends to start because it's cheap, it's simple, and there's a bit of an education factor to it. But that is one game that I've never been accused of cheating in, but I have been accused by this household of cheating in one of my favorite games, which is Clue. Now, you may ask, how in the world do you cheat at Clue? Well, apparently,
Chad, how in the world do you cheat at
thank
Clue?
you for the cue. But apparently, using deductive reasoning and process of elimination questioning is cheating. I do not agree with this, but that is what I've been told.
I will give them, just because of your background, I would give that an asterisk in the books.
Well, see, what I do with it is, you get cards, right? So you've got some suspects, some weapons, and some locations, right? Rooms that are not were not involved in the crime because you've got them in your hand, right?
Yes.
So what you do is, if you have Colonel Mustard and you have the dining room, right? Then you say you eliminate the other ones, right? By saying Colonel Mustard living room and then adding a weapon that you don't have to the question, right? So eventually you narrow that down. And apparently that is reminiscent of card counting in Vegas, and I should never play that game again. Or at least that's what I've been told.
I always liked playing Clue, and everybody would get mad at me because I would go into I would pick a room right off the bat. Didn't matter if I had it in my hand or not, but I would have everybody at the table convinced that it happened in that room, because everybody would gravitate towards the room I was in, and I would just keep throwing just to mess with people. So
you're throwing up smoke screens.
Oh, a lot of times, yes.
And that would drive the kids nuts. They're like, you're cheating. No, that's part of the game, right?
Oh, well, it's sometimes you just gotta be sneaky.
Well, and sneaking. That's a good point. It brings me into the strategy game genre, which I prefer myself.
Yes.
Risk, Axis, and Allies, and even as simply, which is not simple, is chess, right? I used to be
a good game.
I used to be a big chess guy. I loved chess back when when we were in high school and stuff. And you remember Joe, my good buddy Joe McCarty, and I'll shout out to him because I know he'll listen to this. Well, Joe and I used to, before online gaming, we would set up chessboards at our houses, and you've got a grid, so you've got letters on one side, numbers on the other, right? And we would
Yes.
play over the telephone by being,
I never got that deep into it. But our friend Neil, who may be listening, so hey Neil, uh, back in the sixth or seventh grade, had brought a chess set to school one day, and we all became enamored with chess. And so, in study hall, there wasn't a lot of studying going on unless you were looking at a chessboard.
well, of course.
And that was a lot of fun, a lot of strategy based. And that leads me into another game which you already mentioned, but Risk.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That
But
game could go on forever.
yeah, yeah, and that's something that can bring out a little bit of rage in people as well.
I
is
remember
is Risk.
for the people that haven't listened to the show, or this is your first time, Chad and I, although we grew up in the same town, we went to different middle schools and became friends in high school. And I'm sure that it happened at your school, but at the end of the year, when final grades have been turned in and there's a little bit of time before the actual end of the school year, they kind of just, okay, we'll put a movie on, y'all be quiet, don't cause a scene, don't cause me any trouble, let's just ride out the next week of school. So, in our school, they had taken everybody to the auditorium, and they were just kind of like, okay, everybody just hang out here, and we're going to finish this week out. Well, someone had brought Risk to school, and up on the stage, there was anywhere from 10 to 15 of us playing.
That's awesome.
This game went on for a week, five days, and we actually got them to, they didn't move the board on us. They let us leave the board up there,
Oh, that's great.
and there was backdoor dealings and underhanded schemes and plots
Well,
that
yeah.
were.
I mean, obviously, it's
Oh, I mean,
it's
outside of
it's
the game.
worldwide
Yes.
conquest. It's kind of how it goes. And
Uh,
I bet you some of those players involved are the same guys that we're going to have on the show periodically, and the same guys that sit around
I
the
can neither
table playing
confirm
D&D.
nor deny
Yeah,
that.
absolutely, because I know those sneaky bastards. No, Risk was great. Loved that. Had it as a kid. Didn't really have anybody to play it with for a while until I met you guys, because oh man, my mom and dad didn't like that sort of thing, and my brother was too young, so that's just not something.
And Risk
that I
is one of
played.
those games that is a lot of fun with a lot of people. The more people you have, the more interesting that
Yes,
game
absolutely, because you
becomes.
can make those side deals and stuff.
Hmm.
And if I might revert back to uh, chess for just a moment, because you mentioned Neil, our friend Neil, and I've got a great story about that. I believe it was when we were freshmen. Neil started a chess team for the high school,
I remember
and I
this.
got in that, and I only played one tournament because I think it was down at the middle school, okay, where you went to middle school. And we went down there, and I thought I was a pretty decent player. And I was sitting down there, and they sit you all at a table. And I don't know how many there were, but there was somebody that we went to school, I don't know who it was, between me and Neil. And we're playing, and the guy on the other side, he fool's mated me, if you know what I'm talking about. It's a four move checkmate if you're not paying attention to it. And he
Yes,
did
it
it, and he's
is.
like, checkmate. And Neil goes, what? Oh, God! From the other end of the table. And I felt like a complete moron, like a dadgum heel, because I just got slaughtered in four freaking moves by this egghead across this
I
table
can't tell you
from
how many
me.
times it took me to realize that Neil, because he was the one that taught me to play, and he pulled that on me so many
He was
times.
very, very good. Very, very good at it. And I just was not prepared for that. And I had never seen it before. So after the fact, Neil helped me out to learn how that was. Um, but another thing, I don't know, I don't think you ever played it with us because you were in a college further away from us, but we all got together one day, and when we were over at the local university, and we went down to the old store Game Board. And I know that you remember Game
Yes.
Board, okay? And we decided we all chipped in and bought Axis and Allies. You talk about a long game. That sucker would last a long time. But I liked
did
it.
not get to play that
Oh,
one.
I liked it a whole lot because I mean I like history and stuff. So you've got it's a World War II game of area conquest, and man, and so it was like Risk but on a larger scale. But man, that thing could last forever. And we had that sucker set up in the apartment where Neil and I lived, and man, that game took forever. But Jason was part of that as well, and but that was a fun game. You know it. Let's see. I put a little stats on some of these games that I thought were interesting. So the Axis Now is actually a series of games, but we only played the original, and it's World War II strategy. 2 million copies of that thing was sold. Nova Games, Larry Harris was the publisher on that. But and I know it kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit here, but when we were talking about Risk, something that's pretty interesting about Risk is that thing was invented by a French film director, which is kind of funny, right? But is it not kind of based on Napoleonic time period?
Yes, if my understanding of it was that was the driving force.
Right.
How Napoleon had tried to take over the world.
Right. And you know, since we're world taker overs here, as we play D&D and try to conquer the entire areas and things like
We're
that,
protecting. We're not.
we're
conquering.
protecting.
We're protecting.
No, I'm conquering, but you being the paladin, right?
Power hungry mages.
Obviously. But we talked about this earlier in the pre-show, and something that I had played. I think I played a computer version of it, but I never played the actual board game of it. Settlers of Catan. Give us your take on that
on my
one.
list. Settlers of Catan. I know it originated in Germany in '95, and I didn't get to play that game until later on, maybe 2005, somewhere around in there.
All right.
And the people I was playing with, they didn't really know the rules.
That's kind of the best most of the time, right?
And so they're doing things, and I'm trying to pick it up on the fly, and so I'm not digging this game. I mean, and I like strategy games and resource management games, and it was so funny because a friend that I play Dungeons and Dragons with on a regular basis, we were over at their house and we were going to do a game night because his wife wanted to do a game night, and he said, "Well, this is what we've got." And she starts naming games off, and everybody's no, and I said, "Well, what's that one down on the bottom?" He said, "Oh, it's Settlers of Catan," and I'm like, "I've not played that in years." And no one really wants to play that game with me now because I read the rules and figured it out.
Darn those rules.
Darn those rules.
Darn the rules.
We, because you get points for having the largest army or the longest road, and I would just go ahead and amass resources and, okay, I'm not going to fight you for the longest road. I could care less about that, but I'm going to get the cities up quickest. And the next thing everybody knows, they're like, wait a minute, he's got 4 cities and those are worth 2 points apiece. Oh, crap.
You see, that's the great strategy of stuff, just like when we talked about Clue and stuff. That's how I get accused of quote-unquote cheating at the games. It's called strategy.
Yes. And sometimes, because you're able to build cities and roads and upgrade because of your resources, and you can trade with the other players, or you can trade with quote unquote the bank. It's all about place, where you place your 2 initial towns at. Sometimes you just got to have the dice help you out, which is fun. That chance kind of goes into it, which that leads me into another game that's a lot of chance. And I don't know if you've played this one, Chad.
What's that?
Have you played the game Labyrinth?
No, I have not. I don't think I've ever even heard of that. That's odd.
It is a dungeon type game.
You've got me already. Go ahead.
It's from the Czech Republic of all places. I had
Right.
never heard of this. It was by a company, Ravensburger.
Again, awesome name. Dungeons, Raven. Okay, where's the dragon?
Yeah, but it is a board, and it has tile pieces.
Okay.
There are some that are stationary and do not move. They are connected to the board. And then there's different pieces that you get that have different sections of a maze, whether it
Okay.
be a turn, a T, a straight, and you randomly place them into the map. And it's for 4 players, and you each start off in a corner of the map.
All right.
You have cards that have things like a spider or a treasure chest or a crown, an owl, things of that nature. And they're on the pieces on the board. Your job is to collect them in order of your cards. So you turn your first card over, and it's okay. It's a dragon. I've got to make it to the dragon. It's on the opposite side of the board, so you're trying to find a pathway through. But depending on how the pieces are put in, be like, I
Ah,
can't go that way.
right. Now,
This
does
is the
it?
thing. There is an extra piece, and on your turn, you get to put that piece anywhere in the map. So the dungeon is
Ah,
always shifting.
always shifting, and you could probably block other people with that too, right?
Exactly.
Ah, see, again, that'd be called cheating
Another game people don't
in
want to
some
play
worlds,
with me
yeah.
because you have to map out. Okay, I've got to get here, and how am I going to do it? And you don't know what other players are going to do. And what's neat about the pieces is it might be a T intersection.
Got it.
Well, I need to go straight, so I can put it in this way. But if you're on a certain end of the map, and you're like, well, there's a wall in my way, you can move by sliding the piece in on the opposite side. Well, it moves everything in that row. And so there's times that you may be trying to set something up, and then you come in and put something in from a different way, and you're like, oh crap, that's completely screwed up everything I was trying to do. So
That is an interesting game. Big elaborate games that have lots of elaborate pieces, right? That's kind of a thing it seemed to happen like when we were kids, versus the traditional board, cards and some little pieces. Name me, think back, name me like one of the coolest obnoxiously bunch of pieces game. I know it's a stupid sounding question, but you following what I'm trying to say?
the first thing that came to mind was Monopoly.
Monopoly. You think I'm talking about, and love Monopoly. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about like it would take you 15 minutes to set the freaking board up because it's so elaborate.
I would say Mousetrap.
Yes, Mousetrap's a great one. I love that Rube Goldberg machine. Right, had that as a kid. Thought it was cool. Was able to talk my parents into playing it with me. I thought that was fun as all get out. Right now, I can't even remember how you even play the thing, but I think as you move around the board or something, you gain the pieces that you put together, and when you build this Rube Goldberg machine mousetrap, you win, right? So that was a neat thing. They still make that game, and I think that's fascinating.
I remember as a kid, I played that game one time, and I was like, "Yeah, the commercial was way cooler than the game."
Yes,
Because
yes,
no one
yes.
wanted to play it, and we would make try to make it as simple as possible. Where as on the commercial, it was these very elaborate uh, mechanisms and how it was going to work, and you had to time things, and no one wanted to play that one with me.
But another game that had like big parts that you stuck on it folded up weird. Life, right? Life. As a matter of fact, my kids were playing it last night. I mean that game, right? 1860 is when that thing was created, and it was originally
Unbelievable.
called the Checkerboard Game of Life. And what's so jacked up, right? You got these little cars, so it's got room for you, a spouse, and 4 kids. But if you keep rolling the kid theme, like you couldn't figure out what caused that, you got to like lay your kids in between the seats. You got to lay them in on the car or off to the side. You got to leave them at the house, right? So,
That was a game I didn't get to play as a kid
oh
for
yeah,
whatever reason. We never did have that one. Now I can remember us having game nights over at your house, and I remember us playing that on the Xbox. I believe it was.
yes,
Uh,
yeah. And see that's something else. Board games have kind of turned into the digital version of all of these things, especially with like the Nintendo Switch that my kids got, and you play like Mario Party, which is a series of games, but like 4 people or more can play that, and that's super fun. But it just doesn't beat that old sitting around the table and you know laughing at each other kind of deal.
Well, I know we would always have fun when we would do parties at your house.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
game that we never did play was Pictionary,
yeah.
and
I
and that
can't
was a
draw,
fun game. Well, that's what makes it fun.
and I will fully admit I do not like to play games that I am not good at. That's horrible, but it's factual. But you know another game that that is out there that has there's no skill involved with it at all, and it's actually good for our group is Cards Against Humanity.
Okay, I'm gonna asterisk that one because that's not a board game. That is a card
Okay, it's
game.
a card game, all right, but it still obviously is not for kids, and
No.
it will absolutely tell you just how disturbed your friends are if you didn't know that already.
Well, what gets me is because it is a luck of the draw. What you get, I never get anything that's funny. I get things and you're like, wow, that's a real problem.
It's like
We need to find a solution for that.
yeah, yeah, or you're like, oh, that depresses me. That's so sad, Wes.
It's like a '90s emo song or something.
Yeah, something they play on lithium.
Yeah, you're like, wow, I really know what they were feeling right then.
That's funny. How about a game that aggravates you to death? You hate it so bad you never want to play it.
Monopoly.
Monopoly.
Uh,
Why? Tell me why.
well, okay, I have to qualify this now. Uh, my daughters are in that sweet spot for Frozen. Everything Frozen.
They want to build
Uh,
a snowman. I got
yes, and we have the Frozen version of Monopoly.
it.
Okay, now these young children of mine, they've got every Frozen toy known to man, I believe.
Gotcha.
And okay, board games are set up to use the pieces that come with the game,
Yes.
not your stuffed Olaf. It's 3 foot tall. It's not going to fit on this board.
That's
And
perfect.
yeah, and they get to be very competitive with that one because they all want the high end, what would be considered boardwalk and park plays
Okay. All right.
on the traditional board
Right.
because they've got different. It's like scenes from the movie.
Okay.
What
Now,
they've
what
done.
about
So
pieces? Are the pieces the characters from the film?
yes, as characters, you've got Anna and Elsa,
Now, do your
and
children fight over who gets to be
no,
whoever?
because Kaylee is going to be Olaf regardless.
Oh, okay. Well, at
She
least they're
loves the
able to.
snowman. So,
At least they're
and
able to democratically choose something
yes,
like that.
and Isabel loves. She really liked Frozen too. She liked Bruni, the little fire lizard thing, and she wants to use her stuff Bruni on the board, and it doesn't work. So she'll take Elsa. Um, but it's one of those ones they get very competitive and like, but it's in a sweet way because if one of them ends up in the go to jail,
Right.
they will bail each other out. I'm like, I don't think you understand how the game. They will
we
buy
appreciate
stuff for the other one.
we appreciate the sweetness, but no.
Yes, it's like, well, you don't have enough money for that, so here's some money and you go buy it. It's,
And there's a Monopoly version for everything in the freaking world.
I mean,
They just
if
rebrand the
McDonald's,
plant, right? Or
I
they
mean,
just
if
rebrand it.
McDonald's can have one for 20 years, they're gonna slap Monopoly on whatever's hot. So, the Nerdy Old Men podcast Monopoly
You know what?
version
Hey,
will be coming out this fall.
hey, what is it? Milton Bradley? Is that who does Monopoly? Do you hear me out there? We'll be glad to
I
set
believe it's
that up
Parker
for you.
Brothers.
Is
Isn't
it
it?
Parker Brothers? Whomever.
Parker
You want to
Brothers.
make a board game for the
We're
Nerdy Old
in.
Men podcast? I'm 100% in. I will sell out.
That is
Absolutely.
Chad at Nerdy Old
yeah,
Men.
yeah, well, you can
at
reach us
gmail.com.
at.
Check us out, Nerdy Old Men
You know, and
on Twitter.
and that it does bring me to something there that we would really like. When we publish our podcast, we're going to put them out on Twitter as well. We may venture out into a different social media brand at some point, but reach out to us. Tell us what your favorite games are, or your least favorite ones you hate, ones that you flip the table for. That Twitter handle is at Nerdy Old Men. That's at Nerdy Old Men. And our email that you can reach us for show ideas or give your comments there is nerdyoldmen@gmail.com. What other games you got, man? Something else that you think that the listeners might want to listen or hear about?
Well, this was one of the earliest ones that I learned how to play, and I know, like me, Chad, you grew up in a rural town, and there was old men, and they knew how to play this game real good. And I'm talking about checkers.
Checkers. I suck so bad.
Which is funny because you excel at Risk, you excel at Clue, and checkers. It's you move, you jump.
I don't know. But it's like when you go to Cracker Barrel and they got the big pieces out there. It's like, I don't want to sit down. I don't want somebody to challenge me.
Now, when I play with the girls, I show no mercy now. I will say that. I'm that dad. I make them learn the hard way. That's how I learned. Take your lumps.
Well, that's true. And it's kind of funny that you bring that up. My kids, I've never let them win on anything. And I mean, they beat me, and that's just how it is. But when I was young, my brother, and you know him because he plays D&D with us, so I'm going to embarrass him here on the podcast. He liked to play. He liked to play Monopoly, but when he was a little bitty guy, he got extremely angry when we were playing Star Wars Monopoly, and he lost. And he'd get mad. So I had
the force was not with him.
Right. We had to let him win. But then you fast forward to D&D, and he gets clobbered in the alley on his first attempt at playing the game. He kind of got it back. You know what I mean?
He did it the way he was supposed to.
Karma was a straight up bitch right there. But but that's the kind of the thing there. But no, that's good, man. You brought up the show idea about the board games, and I think that's pretty fun. I had never even thought about doing that before, so that's awesome.
Growing up, I mean, living out in the country, a lot of times it was just my sister was the only person I had to play with.
Right.
And if you couldn't go outside, if it was raining or snowing, whatever. And that was all, had my He-Man, my G.I. Joes, and board games.
Right.
That was, and I can remember playing checkers with my dad, and I can remember going over to other people's houses, and they would talk and tell stories, but somebody would always play, checkers or Chinese checkers. There's another one that was.
Never got into
game.
it, man. Never got into it.
There's an art to that, and my great aunt who used to live with us, I remember she had this really nice old. It was a metal Chinese checkers board, and she would get it out, and we would play, and she would just whoop the far out of us.
Of course, and just smile all pleasantly.
Oh, just a little old lady just sitting there in her house dress, and she would just, and she would win.
That's right.
But there was a lot of good memories made around board games.
Well, and I think that's important, and then I still do that here with the kids, and I think that's important. And now us nerdy old men get together and play our games as well. But another segment that we're going to do on our shows, especially when we get some guests, which we're hoping episode 3 may have a guest, but we'll see how that goes, is the Nerdy Old Men Rapid Fire Question Session. Wes, I'm catching you off guard, but I'm going to hammer some questions at you. I want an answer one way or the other. No need for explanation. You ready for this?
Let's do this.
All right, here we go. Star Trek, Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Best superhero film you've ever seen?
Captain America, Winter Soldier.
I kind of figured that. Here's a tough one. Lord of the Rings movies or the Hobbit films?
Lord of the Rings.
And one more. Your favorite non-conventional comic book character?
I would have to say The Question. Throwing you off with a little DC there.
I'll answer that one. Spawn.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that you say about Spawn. Spawn.
I pulled out my Spawn issue #1 and I bought one of those hard shell cover or holders for it and hung it on the wall upstairs in my man cave.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, it's wicked awesome. It still has the $5 sticker on the bag, the comic book bag that I bought. I guess when we were in high school, so it was a long time ago. It seems.
Remember back in 1992, 93, when that issue came out, and $5 was all the money in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this was this was a secondary market price, so it wasn't. I bought it after it had come out, so.
At today's value, you probably got a really good deal on it.
I don't even know now, but we're gonna do some of that. Was just a little taste of these rapid fire questions. So I know you're working on a couple guests. I'm working on a couple guests. It's gonna be awesome. We'll get them in there and surprise them with these questions and see what these guys set out. I mean, I'm glad that you did it. Several of your answers were wrong, but that's okay. Not everybody's perfect, and we will just carry on from there. But no, man, I think this was good talking about these games and stuff, and that'd be awesome. The next episode will be a surprise too.
Yes,
again,
like
please reach out to us and talk to us and let us know what
definitely
what
let us know
you
what
think.
you thought.
Absolutely.
I'll quit talking over Chad. Y'all might be able to understand what's going on.
So until next time, this is the Nerdy Old Men podcast again. I am not Colonel Mustard, but I may actually have a lead pipe in the kitchen standing by for Wes to show up so I can clock him.
I will be with Miss Scarlet in the library.
Aha!
But we want to thank everybody for listening to us, the nerdy old men.
Until next time, everybody. See you later.
Yeehaw.